Okay, in this video, we're going to look at the kingdom fungi and its classification. So, first of all, let's look at the characteristics of the kingdom fungi. So, the kingdom fungi, they are multicellular eukaryotic organisms, except yeast. They are multicellular means they are made up of more than one cell. Eukaryotic means that the cell has a nucleus, a true nucleus. Eu means true, karyote means nucleus. So they have a true nucleus. So they are multicellular eukaryotic organisms except yeast. Yeast is an example of a unicellular fungi. So all fungi are multicellular and eukaryotic except yeast. Yeast is a unicellular eukaryotic fungi. So that's very important. You must note that. Then another feature of the fungi that you should know is that the body is made up of thread-like structures called hypha, right? So if you look at the body of this mushroom, which is a fungi, you will see vividly that the body is made up of thread-like structures, thread-like filaments. These thread-like structures are referred to as what? Hypha. And a group of them is referred to as mycelium. And the mycelium is what forms the vegetative body of the fungi. So the mycelium is the main living structure of the fungus that grows and absorbs nutrients. And that is why it is referred to as the vegetative body. It is the main living structure of the fungus. So a mycelium, if you take a mycelium out of this whole plant, if you take a mycelium out of this whole fungus and then bring it here, that mycelium can grow into a full-blown fungi. Why? Because it is the vegetative body. It is the main living structure of the fungus that grows and absorbs what? Nutrients. Then another feature of the fungi that you would want to take note of is that they have no pigment for photosynthesis. They have no pigment for photosynthesis. And why is it that they don't have a pigment for photosynthesis? It's because they don't have chloroplast in their cell. The chloroplast is what is responsible for the production of what? Chlorophyll, which is the green pigment in plants. So fungi, they do not have chloroplast, and so they cannot produce chlorophyll. So since they cannot produce chlorophyll, they cannot carry out photosynthesis, which is an autotrophic mode of nutrition. The question is, how do they then feed? So fungi carry out a heterotrophic mode of nutrition, which means that they feed on already prepared food, right? They are dependent feeders. So examples of the heterotrophic nutrition that fungi carries out is the saprophytic nutrition, in which they feed on dead decaying organic substances. An example of such fungi is mushroom. So when you see mushroom, it grows usually on dead woods. Why? Because it's feeding on those dead decaying what? Wood. Then, so heterotrophic nutrition in fungi can be saprophytic. It can be parasitic, which means that they feed at the expense of other organisms. Example is Candida. Candida albicans. Candida albicans. This is an example of a parasitic fungi. And we also have Ostilagomedis that causes rice moth. Is also an example of a parasitic fungi. Then there are some that goes into a symbiotic association or mutualistic association with other organisms. Example of such fungi is what? The lichen or the lichen. And this is an association between an algae and a fungi, right? So these are the different modes of nutrition fungi can undergo. It can undergo saprophytic nutrition, it can exhibit parasitic nutrition and symbiotic nutrition, right? So, like I said, fungi are multicellular eukaryotic organisms except what? Yeast. Yeast is a unicellular fungi. So the scientific name for yeast is Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and it is used in baking and brewing. It's used in baking and brewing. So unicellular fungi would reproduce asexually by budding or by fission. So having known all this, let's dash to the next picture that we have. So another feature of the fungi that you would want to take note of is that their cell wall is made up of chitin. That's very important. This chitin is soft and leathery. It's not like the chitin in arthropods. Why? Because this chitin does not contain a lot of calcium. It does not contain calcium ion, and so it is soft and leathery. What makes up the chitin is a homopolysaccharide known as N-acetylglucosamine. So you must take note of this polysaccharide. You must take note of this substance. It is the substance that makes up, or the chemical compound, or the monomer that makes up the what? The chitin. So like I said, this chitin is different from the chitin in arthropod in the sense that it does not contain what? Calcium ion. And that is what makes it soft and what? And leathery. Then another feature of the fungi you would want to know about is that they store carbohydrates as glycogen. And glycogen is what? Animal fat. So they store carbohydrates as what? Glycogen. Also, they can undergo sexual and asexual reproduction. They can undergo sexual and asexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction in fungi is usually by plasmogamy and cheiogamy. Sexual reproduction involves two individuals, right? Two individuals, the male strain and the female strain, right? So sexual reproduction in fungi involves two processes, plasmogamy and cheiogamy. We're going to look at this when we start looking at the life cycle of different forms of fungi. So first of all, what is cheiogamy? Like I said, the word chio means nucleus, right? Nucleus. Then gamy means to come together. So cheiogamy is the process whereby the nucleus of two different strains of fungi fuse together during reproduction. So if this is the nucleus of the positive strain of the fungus, and this is the nucleus of the negative strain of another fungus. So when they fuse together, that process is referred to as what? Cheiogamy. So cheiogamy is the process whereby the nucleus of two different strains of fungi fuse together during reproduction. Then plasmogamy, plasma refers to as the cell membrane, right? Or the plasma membrane. So plasmogamy is the process whereby the plasma membrane of two different strains of fungi fuse together during reproduction. So the fusion of the plasma membrane is what? Plasmogamy, while the fusion of the nucleus is referred to as cheiogamy. And these two processes are involved in the sexual reproduction in fungi. We're going to look at this later. Then, so they undergo sexual and asexual reproduction, right? And the sexual reproduction, the two forms are plasmogamy and cheiogamy. Then asexual reproduction that involves only one organism. The asexual reproduction is usually by spore formation, by producing spores, or by fragmentation. So the sexual reproduction in fungi is usually by spore formation or by fragmentation. Fragmentation. Spore formation means spores are being produced, right? Fragmentation means if this is a fungi, if this is a fungus, a part of it can just break off. Let's say this part can just fragment, can just break off. And when it breaks off, it grows into another fungus. That is what is referred to as what? Fragmentation. So you must take note of these two. So like I mentioned before, yeast is a unicellular fungi, right? It's a unicellular fungus. And the mode of reproduction is usually the asexual mode of reproduction. Asexual. So the asexual mode of reproduction is usually by budding or by fission. Budding or by fission. So you must not forget this. You must not forget this. right? So having known this, let's dash to the classification of the kingdom fungi. The classification of the kingdom fungi. So the kingdom fungi is largely classified broad class, into two broad classes, or into two broad groups. We have the conocytic fungi, which is also known as the non-septate fungi, and the septate fungi, right? Conocytic fungi and the septate fungi. What does that mean? If this is a fungus, uh, if this is a fungus and I have the nucleus just like that, this is an example of a non-septate fungus because it's not partitioned, right? Then if I have a fungus like this, and then this fungus is partitioned, and each partition contains a nucleus, this is referred to as what? A septate fungus. So fungi are classified into two broad classes, or into two broad groups. We have the conocytic fungi, which is a non-septate fungi, and it looks like this, and the septate fungi, which is partitioned, right? And it looks like this. So the conocytic fungi, which is also known as the non-septate fungi, is further classified into two divisions, right? And the two divisions are chytridomycota and zygomycota. So the chytridomycota, they have flagella. The zygomycota, they do not have flagella, right? So I can ask you a question. Which of the following conocytic fungi has a flagella? So you should think of what? Chytridomycota. Because chytridomycota is a conocytic fungi, means that it is non-septate and it has a what? Flagella. Zygomycota is a conocytic fungi and it has what? No flagella. So note the difference. Then we have the septate fungi. The septate fungi is further classified into three divisions, and this classification is based on their reproductive structure, right? So under that we have the ascomycota, and their reproductive structure is the ascus. Take note of that. We have the basidiomycota. Their reproductive structure is the basidium. We have deuteromycota. They have no reproductive structure. So master this table. Again, fungi is classified into two broad groups. We have conocytic fungi and the septate fungi. The conocytic fungi is further divided into two divisions of fungi, and that is based on the presence or absence of flagella. Those that have flagella, they are referred to as chytridomycota. Those without flagella are the zygomycota. Then the septate fungi is further classified into three divisions based on their reproductive structure. Those whose reproductive structure is the ascus, they are referred to as ascomycota. The division whose reproductive structure is the basidium are referred to as the basidiomycota. And those that don't have a reproductive structure are referred to as what? Deuteromycota.